Hey, what's up, guys? There's a ton of stuff I want to cover right now in this huge wave of Street Fighter 6 news, but before I really do a big deep dive into it, I want to start off simple. I want to talk about the new modern control type that we have for Street Fighter 6 because it's a really big topic right now, and I want to give some personal thoughts on it. It's mostly positive though, but I will mention some concerns at the end. Now, I see a lot of people talk about this modern control type in a negative way. And I mean, I'm not surprised because dumbing down a fighting game or any game genre for that matter is always a heated topic. On one side, we want our player base to be as large as possible so it can grow, but at the same time, we don't want to compromise our competitive integrity of the game either, right? So I guess to start this off, we all know one of the biggest issues for getting players in the fighting game is execution. This is something I've experienced playing fighting games all my life and teaching others. No other genre of game has this issue. It's very unique to fighting games. And it's not just simple like how to throw a fireball. It's also doing that fireball in a combo while linking, two hits and then canceling the last hit into that fireball. It's basic stuff for like seasoned fighting game players, but it's very overwhelming for beginners. And we just got a taste of this once again just recently. Remember that pro streamer Twitch tournament where they got a bunch of pro players that have never played fighting games to play Street Fighter 5, learn it in just a couple of days. They were losing their marbles trying to learn the game, just doing basic B&B combos, and these are pro players from other games like FPS and whatever. It was really funny to see, but it's the sad truth. So what is Capcom going to do about this problem? What's changing now? Well, for Street Fighter 6, it's going to allow players to choose between a modern control type or a classic one. And the modern control type will allow players to perform one button special moves or even auto combos. But before you panic, there is a catch. And it's a real clever one too, which I'll get into real soon here. But just give me a second. I really need to hammer this point about execution. It's not an easy problem to solve. There's been a lot of fighting games, even that came out recently, have tried dumbing down the game execution wise in some sort of way, such as having auto combos or just straight up having one button special moves. But unfortunately, when you do this, there are consequences because it really limits the design and power of a special move. So, what do I mean? Well, for example, let's say you give a character like Ryu a one button uppercut, a Shoryuken, okay? That would be very powerful, almost game breaking. It would completely change it because uppercuts are mostly very fast, they're quick, and they're usually invincible. It's very strong. But by adding execution to the uppercut, now you have to do the Dragon Punch motion to do it. If someone's jumping at you and you need to do this in a pinch right away, it requires focus. It requires concentration. The motion itself is actually what bounces the special move. It's what allows Capcom to make such a powerful attack. If the opponent, let's say, just jumps over my head, for example, I would have to readjust my motion to make it cross-cut and uppercut and the other way. That requires even more focus. This is why when you watch like pro matches of Street Fighter 5, you don't see these guys anti-airing 100% of the time. There are always times where they get away with these jumps. Why is that? It's because of the mental stack. It's because when you add execution to it, it adds more skill, more, focus. But if you take that away, if you make the big anti-air invincible uppercut only a one button special move, then I guarantee you pros will always be able to anti-air 100% of the time. You would never be able to jump, and it would require zero effort. It would be boring to watch, and it would be boring to play. This is why a character like Ed in Street Fighter 5, his cycle rising where you press two kicks and he goes up and you can anti-air, this is why that move is so slow, because Capcom has put into account that it's motionless, right? You can't cross-cut with it because it's too slow, right? And it's hard to use in a pinch if the opponent's already jumping in on you. This is why Zangief's super is a 720 motion. You have to do two circles because it starts up in one frame and it's unblockable. It'd be so powerful if it wasn't hard to use, right? This is why a move like Cody's EX Zonk, it's a move that's super fast, plus on block, and if it hits you, you're going to lose like half your life. You got to hold down two buttons for a period of time, and while you're doing this, you might not have access to your V skill, to your throw. There's some sacrifice, there's some risk to it. That's what you can make these moves so powerful, because the execution. This is why Guile's Sonic Boom recovers so quickly. He has to charge it. He can't move while he does it. Flash Kick, the same thing. M. Bison's knee press. Honda's headbutt, right? I can go on and on, but you guys get my point. Special inputs aren't archaic like a lot of casuals think they are. They still exist in fighting games for a reason. It's actually what makes fighting games really, really deep. And it's what gives developers a way to make these cool, powerful attacks without breaking the game. And it's not just the easy inputs that are a problem for fighting games. There's some issues with auto combos as well. So, for example, Dragon Ball FighterZ. The auto combos are actually used in pro play because they're being abused, because what they do is they allow your character to pursue harder and extend the combos to make them longer. It's actually really funny. So it can be abused in certain ways. Just recently, KOF 15, sometimes when you're trying to chain your lights when you're pressing A rapidly, you'll accidentally do an auto combo, and that could be annoying too since you can't turn it off. Alright, I'm sorry guys, I'm done making my point about execution, so now let's get to Street Fighter 6. Why am I excited about the new modern control type? Well, like I mentioned before, Capcom did something clever where they made a trade-off, a weakness to it. If you look carefully at the controls for the modern control type, you can see there's a designated special move button, SP. On the PlayStation 4, it's the triangle button. But because there's a special move button now, there's only 3 attack buttons rather than the traditional 6. You only have light, medium, and heavy. Now, on one side, this is very intuitive because it's easy for a beginner to understand because they're just the face buttons, right? Light, medium, heavy, and special move button. Easy. The top buttons are your macros to do throws, auto combos, and drive abilities because otherwise you couldn't do them if you don't have 6 buttons, right? And that's also very intuitive and easy to understand. But the weakness is you don't have those other 3 attacks, right? We don't even know what the light, medium, and heavy even mean. We don't know if the light is like only your light punch, or because if it's not the light punch, the light kick, you might not have a 3-framer, right? Or if it's your medium, then we don't know if you're missing some of your strong poke buttons. If it's a kick or a punch because you need speed. Heavy punch is your sweep, right? Is it your heavy kick or your heavy punch? So there is a weakness to it, but it's also intuitive and great for beginners. Another weakness is the special moves themselves, because you would technically only have access to 4 special moves, because one special move is just neutral, just pressing the special move button, and the other are the 3 directions, back, down, and forward. You can't do up plus special move because then you're going to jump, right? So there's only 4. We already know there's a bunch of characters with more than 4 special moves just by looking at the PlayStation blog. Even Ryu has more than 4 special moves, man. He's got 2 new ones that we know of. One is this palm smash that he has, and this other is this like Denjin charge install that powers up his fireballs and his palm smash. We know that Jamie, he's a drunken boxer, and he has this drink power up, and that gives him access to even more special moves and powers them up. And Chun-Li, she even has stances. And what about future characters with like giant move sets, like Akuma, for example? He's definitely not going to have access to all of his moves with just 4 special moves, right? And now that I think about it, you're not going to have a choice on the strength of your special move, and that definitely matters too, right? There's gonna be a difference between wanting to do a light uppercut or a heavy uppercut, but just on the horizontal range or the speed alone. The option to make your fireball slow or fast with the light or heavy versions. We don't even know if you can do the EX versions, or I'm sorry, the OD versions. We don't know if you have access to those either. And auto combos are definitely not a problem because they're very limited. You only get 3 auto combos per character. They're going to be very predictable. They're going to be the same 3 every time, right? And with the additional defensive mechanics such as parry or drive impact, you'll be able to counter them easily if you see it coming. And even though I just stated a lot of weaknesses on using modern controls, at the same time, it's also a very clever way to just allow casuals or beginners to just jump in the game and play and do really cool stuff, do the special moves and not be overwhelmed by the amount of different normal attacks and special attacks, at the expense of the game's balance and design, because not everyone is forced to use these controls. It's great. When Street Fighter 6 comes out, if you're already a seasoned fighting player, you can just pick the classic controls right away, and you have access to all your character's tools. Or if you just want to start and learn fighting games and you're willing to put in the time, you can just use classic controls. No one's forcing you. It's an awesome idea. I love it. Even the choice of words of calling it modern control type is really smart by Capcom, because This is gonna sound really cheesy, but in my experience of teaching people fighting games, casuals don't like the idea of something being called easy mode or baby controls, for example. It's insulting. You know, a lot of beginners, when they jump into fighting games, they try to do all the really hard stuff. They're like, what is the most damaging combo? Just tell me what it is, right? What is the most longest combo you can do? And they try to do the hard stuff right away, and they fail at it, and they get discouraged, and then they quit, and they never play again, right? And it's kind of like calling it modern control type. It's kind of like when you play a racing game, for example, you can choose between auto transmission or manual. I suck at racing games, dude. So I always choose auto transmission so I can just focus on, on turning left or right and, not have to worry about the gears, But auto transmission in most racing games, they don't give you that flexibility, that control. Manual is better overall, right? Once you get better at the game. And it's a cool feeling that a lot of people can relate to when you switch to manual eventually for a racing game, for example. It's going to be the same thing for Street Fighter 6. I think Capcom has put a lot of thought into this. They've done a lot of experimenting with Street Fighter 5 with different control types of characters like, Ed and Falcon. They've figured out a way without damaging the game itself, They could have made it like free to play, for example, which is going to hurt the game's, content and quality. Or they can do like massive tutorials, which really slows down the fun, honestly, at the end of the day. I mean, how many games have you guys played when they tell you, this button does that button does that? And it's annoying. You just want to get started and play right away. You don't want to sit through hours of tutorials, Or the worst is, just dumbing down the game, right? Making one button specials or auto combos. That's just going to make everyone angry. I've told this story a million times, guys, but it's really stuck with me. I'll tell it really quick here. But a really long time ago, when I went to E3 to play Street Fighter 5 for the very first time, there was a lot of casuals, business people, and all that. And one time when I went up to the machine and I was playing Street Fighter 5, there was this dude in this suit, okay? And he was like, looking at the controls and looking how to do the specials. And he's played Street Fighter before, but he's never played it competitively. And he couldn't do a fireball. He was like, looking at the motion, and he was like, I could see him trying to do it, and I showed him really slowly. I did my best, right? And he just couldn't do it once. And eventually he's like, let's just play. He's like, let's just play. He was being really friendly, but I felt bad because I'm like, dude, I'm playing this game and he can't play it, and it really stuck with me. It's something that I just never would forget. Or, let's say you're playing the game and a friend comes over, and they're like, hey, I want to play too, but they haven't played fighting games. They're going to be able to just jump right in and be like, look, this is the special move button. These are the 3 attack buttons. Anyone can get that, Even my nephew, when he sees Street Fighter 6, he hasn't played any fighting games. He's going to be able to jump in and play right away as well. It's going to be fun. When this game comes out, I think it's going to be a lot bigger than people think. I think there's going to be a lot of huge streamers that are going to, they're going to check out the world tour mode. I don't think they're going to hop into ranked, but they're going to play with their friends and they're going to build the, have zero training mode time. And they're just going to jump in and have fun, and everyone can see all the cool stuff being done right away. So I guess I have some final thoughts and concerns that I should get out of the way before I wrap up this video. The first is Capcom going to allow modern controls to be used in ranked? I think they are, because modern controls won't really change opponents' like poor decision making. There's this game called Fantasy Strike, and they have like one button special moves. You can't even do crouching attacks in that game. And when I played that game online, I was absolutely mauling players that didn't have fighting game experience, because modern control types aren't going to like help a player's spacing, their neutral, their footsies. It's not going to help them adapt. It's just going to allow them to play, but you still actually have to learn a fighting game in the first place. So I'm not concerned about it being in ranked. Now, the main concern I actually really have is what we just talked about in this video, is making really powerful special moves one button. So what's going to happen with Guile, for example, on modern controls? He's going to have access to a sonic boom and a flash kick with one button. So how's Capcom going to balance that? If it's simply just doing a sonic boom without charge, it's going to be very strong. At any point you jump over that sonic boom, he's also going to have access to flash kick, and it's going to hit you on both sides. So Capcom definitely has to think about what they're going to do about that. There's other moves like Zangief's, his super, right? We just talked about that as well. Or a character like Honda, 100 hand slap, or his butt slam, or his headbutt, like there's moves that require charge or require some kind of sacrifice, and if you make them one button special moves, then of course we're going to have a problem. I don't know if the sonic boom specifically will be a problem, because now that I think about it, you know, you do have parry now, right? And you could just drive rush out of that parry, but the jumping, definitely an issue. And is modern controls, will they be banned from tournaments? I guess that depends on what I just talked about. If you can't abuse them, then maybe they'll be banned from tournaments. We'll have to see, right, when the game comes out. It's gonna be real interesting, and maybe we'll use modern controls myself and see if I can break the game somehow and abuse it and figure out if there, you know, it really is a bad thing. But yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on it, guys. Sorry if I rambled too much, but it's really on my mind because so many people are talking about it, and I think it's important you guys know the pros and cons and how I think it's actually a really good thing for Street Fighter 6 overall. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on the whole thing. If you guys think it's good for the game, you think if it's intuitive or a great idea, if there's a better way to do it, I would like to know. As usual, guys, please subscribe to the channel. I'll be covering Street Fighter 6 passionately for a very long time until it's released, and then passionately again. All right, guys, till next time, take care. Peace.